What's up, guys? Kaeyoh from Storm here again, and today I wanted to talk about everyone's favorite character, the good old slug, Abathur. And I wanted to talk about, more specifically, how to pick him and the different play styles you should be utilizing when you go for an Abathur in solo queue in Hero League. And why I think this is actually a really effective character to be playing. A lot of people actually tend to shy away from Abathur when it comes to Hero League because it requires more teamwork because your team needs to make different kind of decisions that normally, they would be able to take certain team fights if they had a full fifth member, so to speak. And just people tend to shy away from it because it doesn't feel like you can be as impactful, and a lot of times your team will blame you if anything goes wrong. But there are a couple scenarios that I think Abathur is actually an extremely good pick. There's a reason that people pick him very consistently in competitive play. He's constantly banned out on large maps, and I'm going to go over some of that in this video. So we're just hanging out in try mode here, so I can go through a couple of the builds sitting here at level 1. But first let me talk about, let me start with when you should be picking Abathur. And there's really two main scenarios. That's going to be something I keep going back to in this video. Two main styles of gameplay that I think you should know. So the first one is when you're drafting around an Illidan. So if you have an Illidan on your team and it's picked, and you know you're going to have the Illidan, maybe you're duo queuing, maybe the person is just saying in lobby that they're thinking about, picking Illidan. Illidan works best when he's complemented with certain characters, and those characters are Tassadar, Abathur, and burst healing supports like Uther and Rhaegar. So when you're in those situations, and you have that potential Illidan on your team, that can be a really good time to be considering picking up Abathur. And when you're playing that sort of style where you have an Illidan, you're going to be wanting to go a specific build, which is the hat build. That's what I'll be calling it. That's when you're picking all your talents that are going to make your symbiote, your hat, more effective. You're going to be doing more damage with the hat, and it's going to really synergize with Illidan, who's just constantly moving forward, always in their face, and just running all over the enemy team. So let's start going through that build right now. At level 1, the first thing you're going to want to take is the Pressurized Glands talent, which is going to increase the range of the spike burst by 25% and decrease the cooldown. This talent just is an amazing talent actually for a level 1 talent. It really increases your DPS significantly. It also, the one thing that's cool when you have this talent is when you're heading like minions and lane and stuff, you can push a lot harder as well because you can just, hat the front minion and you'll hit the front and back line of the enemy wave. And it's got the shorter cooldown. So it helps with the pushing power. And then of course, when you're using this on an Abathur's head, you're getting significantly more damage out of it and usually hitting more than one person. When you have the untalented version, that spike burst can be very underwhelming most of the time. You're usually only hitting the person that they're directly on at the moment. So that's going to be your level 1 talent. Here we'll do the level up as well. Okay, and level 4, you're going to be wanting to take that again. The attack speed talent. Okay, that's where you're going to want to go at level 4. This is extremely good with Illidan specifically because, as you probably know, Illidan's passive relies on his attack speed. Every attack decreases his cooldowns by 1 second. So having that, especially with an Illidan whose job is to constantly move forward into the enemy team and constantly auto attack, you're just going to be getting tons of value out of that. So already, just with your 1 and 4, you're making your team fight exceptionally stronger just by adding an Illidan. Here, we'll go ahead and we'll just set the level to 30 so we can go through the talents. So at level 1 we got Pressurized Glands, level 4 Adrenal Overload. Already you're starting to see, you're making your Illidan way stronger already. At level 7, this is where you have a bit of an option. Needle Spine, in my opinion, is not really the greatest route. Personally, I prefer either still going Vile Nest or going with the Mule, depending on what you need in your comp. right now, Vile Nest, the fact that this is a 50% slow for 4 seconds is actually insane. So I think Vile Nest is still usually the way to go, even though you're not going to have quite as many mines as if you went Prolific Dispersal. You're still going to be getting a ton of value out of it. A lot of that just has to do with being smart about when you see an objective coming up, you tunnel near the objective, relatively, and or just like move towards it and just place a bunch of mines around the objective and then go to the other side of the map to soak, on the other side. I'll talk more about like that strategy later on. But so here we're gonna just go Vile Nest, okay? At level 10, you're gonna be going Ultimate Evolution. You can go Monstrosity in some cases. I think this is actually this particular build works best with Evolved Monstrosity rather than the other build, but I still prefer with both builds. Personally, I prefer to get Ultimate Evolution. So we're going to get that. A lot of times, team fights will go something like this, because you fall into a weird situation with Abathur when you're going this build, where you'll be going into a team fight, and it's like, do I hat the Illidan or do I hat the carrier or whatever? Or should I just be cloning, a carrier or a tank or something to have another body there, have more utility, all of that stuff. And most of the time, you're just going to be wanting to hat the Illidan. But as soon as the Illidan has to move away from the fight, or the Illidan dies or whatever, that's when you want to be using your clone. So moving on to 13, here's where you have a little bit of an option, but personally, I like going for, if you're going to be doing the hat build, just going for Soma Transference here and getting the heals. A lot of people will take the range attack even with this build, and I do too sometimes, depending on the situation, like if I'm getting a lot of value out of my split push that game. But a lot of times you really need your hat and your Illidan to be impactful, and sometimes it feels like you're just not strong enough in team fights if you opt to go for the 13-16 Locust talents. Particularly when you have an Abathur. This is specifically pretty much if you have an Illidan on your team. Sorry, not Abathur, an Illidan on your team. I would take this at 13. And then at 16, taking the Spike Burst slows. So what that does is at 13, your Spike Burst heals, and then at 16, you're getting the slow on it. Now your Spike Burst is actually God tier. So we're going to get that. That's another 40% slow there. And then at level 20, you have an incredible power spike with Abathur with this build. Probably one of the best level 20 power spikes in the game is getting this Hive Mind talent that allows you to symbiote 2 people at once. Especially the way they've worked it too, you constantly have that second hat up. So it's really good. You're giving 2 targets attack speed, all this value that you're getting out of each W with the reduced cooldown, constantly proccing, is just massive. So that is the hat build in essence right there. And if you have an Illidan and you have this build, that Illidan, if they know how to play well, is going to be an absolute god in team fights. Alright, so now we looked at that. Let's reset the talents, let's start over, and let's talk about the other scenario. So you're in pick ban, no Illidan or anything. What I look for is either getting a Jaina or a Zeratul on my team. Jaina or Zeratul. If you have either of those characters, I think going the second route is very good. So the second route is to go the mine build. And the mine build relies a lot more on messing with your opponent's rotations, keeping them constantly slowed, and just overall getting ahead of them and using the map manipulation tactics that the mines give you, rather than relying on just being a better team fighting team. So what you're going to be building with this mine build, as opposed to the hat build, at level 1 you're going to go Toxic Nest, deal more damage. It gives that a dot section to the mine as well, so it's not just the initial damage. So you're going to be going that. At level 4 you want to go Prolific Dispersal, okay, because that's going to reduce the cooldown and you get the 2 additional charges. which means you're going to have 5 mines stacked up. So with this talent, once you have this, and you have the 5 mines, a lot of people will be constantly spamming out their mines. But what I think you need to do is hold on to your charges for, say this is a tribute area and there's a tribute spawning, right where this target dummy is or whatever. As soon as the thing pops up and you know it's going to be there, lay in your mines something like this, or like, right around the surrounding area where they're going to be rotating through. Save your charges so that you can get this huge amount of mines right in that area. In the early game, though, this build is also very effective at stopping roam squads. So if you're against something like a Kerrigan Tyrande or a Butcher Tyrande or something, them constantly hitting these mines will make that gank squad extremely less effective. You can protect tri-lanes, all kinds of stuff. So moving on to the 7 talent, that's where you're going to want to go Vile Nest. This is really where you hit the big power spike of this build. Just by having these 3 talents on your W, or on your mines, I should say, makes them incredibly powerful. It can, you can completely stop rotations to objectives. Your opponents usually don't calculate how much they're going to get thrown off by running into these mines, and it can get you a lot of kills, it can get you a lot of objectives, and you can also place them so that you can move out more aggressively in lane, and you can do things like actually kiting people as well. So if you have like a mine here, for example, and the person's coming from like right here, and you have 2 mines like this, they're going to hit this one and be really slowed, and even though you're right next to them, you'll be able to move away from them because they're going to keep hitting these slow mines, not going to be able to actually catch you. Alright, so we got our 147 talents. For the ultimate, you're going to also want to go ultimate evolution. And this is why I say you want to have either a Jaina or a Zeratul. Because with this build, when you have the ultimate evolution, with that only being a 50-second cooldown, you need to have really good clone targets on your team. That's a really short cooldown, and that's what makes this so strong, is that Jaina and Zeratul both do an exceptional amount of burst on their clone. And if you're constantly cloning your Jaina, you're going to get tons of pickoffs, you're going to get tons of burst damage, and those clones are extremely powerful. At 13, this is where you're going to want to go the Locust gain a range attack. This allows you to split push a lot more effectively. Like I said, with these mines covering you all the time, you're going to be able to be more aggressive with your positioning when it comes to split push. And then at 16, you're going to go the spawning a group of locusts, which that's where you really can start being impactful on the opposite side of the map. At level 20, this is where you can kind of make a decision that might change. Most of the time I'll be getting locust nests, but you can go for the hive mind still as well, although I think locust nest is the way to go. Late game, you're trying to create a lot of pressure. Basically you're just relying on your clones to be your team fight presence. The clone is going to do most of the work for you. So with that, you have your 2 builds. I think playing Abathur with this style will allow you to get it in good picks. You shouldn't be picking Abathur blindly because you end up in situations where you don't have good clone targets or an Illidan, and then you're pretty much screwed. It's much harder to win. So the 2 scenarios to recap: 1, you've got the Illidan on your team, where you're just going to be constantly hatting the Illidan, building into the hat, and buffing him. And then the other scenario is when you have more standard comp, but you have a Jaina or a Zeratul on your team. And that's where you're going to be wanting to go the mine build and relying on the clone of Jaina and Zeratul every chance you get for team fights to do that extra burst. Hope that was helpful, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think about the builds, if you have any suggestions or anything. And hope you guys have some good games. See you next time. Bye.
I'm still in that ass. 2 seconds and I'm going in deep.
Okay, drop.
Bomb?
Oh yeah, bomb him.
I missed, I think. Oh, there it is! Hey!